First of all, I want to thank Clean Coast Ireland for inviting me to talk and for nominating Sea Trails. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, genuinely thrilled, so thanks. This is my business, Sea Trails. I'm located in the northwest of Ireland in County Sligo, and I do guided archaeological walking tours along the coast but also inland, and I also incorporate other activities like horse riding, and this year I'll be doing kayaking, or next year I'll be doing kayaking as well. Sea Trails is all about growing awareness towards the importance of archaeological heritage and historical heritage and natural heritage in Sligo at the moment, and hopefully maybe I'll go further afield in the future. So I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to go on about Sea Trails today, I'm going to talk about coastal heritage sites in Ireland. So I'm going to do round Ireland in 15 minutes. I haven't covered Northern Ireland because I know there's a lady here who's going to be talking about Northern Irish heritage. For anyone who is from Northern Ireland, sorry for leaving you out, I didn't mean to. But I'll start by focusing on some of the most important heritage sites. So I grew up on a farm in County Meath. I'm not from Sligo. My parents had a boat, so we used to go sailing when we were children, and I got the love for the sea from that, and it never left me. So I moved to Sligo because it's absolutely stunning. I absolutely love it, and I've got everything there. I've got incredible archaeology and landscape and the coast. So what I'm doing is something that I'm very passionate about. Okay, so I'm going to start. So Ireland today has 86 blue flag sites, which is a pretty good number, and hopefully that will continue to rise in the future. In my opinion, awareness is the key for keeping our coasts rubbish free, and this can be done simply through means of education, heritage awareness, and ecotourism. And as Owen was saying earlier, how important the project of the Wild Atlantic Way is. It's so important that we put the message out to these people who are coming to Ireland for the first time. We want to be seen as as clean as possible. I think that's really, really important, and I think Ireland still needs to wake up to that. Okay, so I'm starting in Donegal. I'm going to have to be quick. The coastal counties of the Republic of Ireland are above, and I've started my talk with Lough Swilly in North Donegal. There's several historic forts located at strategic points along the loch, and this is Dunree Fort, and it's now a military museum. Lough Swilly played a very important role in maritime history. Earls O'Neill and O'Donnell fled to Spain from here, as you know, in the 16th century, and throughout World War I later on, Lough Swilly provided for a very important naval base for the British. But however, De Valera closed it to them in World War II in an effort to protect Ireland and maintain neutrality. There are a number of forts along Lough Swilly, but it's also quite heavily affected by aquaculture, which isn't really that positive in terms of protecting the marine environment, unfortunately. But there's other types of heritage here that we don't see, but they're underwater. And this is my pet subject, underwater archaeology. This is the steamship Laurentic. It's sitting on the seabed just to the north of Lough Swilly. It was wrecked back in the First World War, and it's lying in 40 metres. So while the salvage rights are privately owned, the World War I wreck is still an intriguing prospect for divers, with 22 gold bars of bullion still unclaimed. So obviously it's of great interest to any divers out there. Okay, so in Ireland as a whole, we have over 10,000 wrecks on the Irish wrecks database at present. So that's a pretty big number. And the latest surveys have been carried out by Infomar, have revealed a whole lot more, and some incredible imagery from side scan sonar, acoustic sounding, all the new technologies that are out there mapping the seabed. So this image is probably, for me, the most amazing image we have in Ireland in terms of World War historic wrecks. This is a tank lying on the seabed. It was part of a convoy of 100 ships en route from New York to Liverpool, and it was torpedoed by a U-boat 28 kilometres off Malin Head. It was carrying a cargo of military tanks for use on the Western Front. Vehicles, 16,000 tonnes of fuel, crew and passengers. So again, it would be a fantastic sight for any diver, but I'm not sure whether you can call this kind of an impact on a marine environment. It's been there for so long, but if the fuel leaked, well then it could be an impact on fish and marine life, but I don't think anything's ever going to happen with it in the future. So just before I leave Donegal, just to show you that it has pristine beaches. For anyone who's been there, it's absolutely stunning. Very few people on them. But they do have their problems in terms of aquaculture. A lot of the bays are kind of overfished, sadly. Can't stand up here and not mention Tory Island. This is known as the jewel of the North Atlantic, and I do believe it is. It's absolutely incredible. It's situated in the northwest periphery of Europe. This part of Ireland has been invaded for thousands of years. The fort of Balor on Tory Island is an example of a monument relating to the Irish legendary giant. And Balor was a primordial deity of Irish mythology and the king of the Fomorians, a foreign supernatural race who sailed to Ireland thousands of years ago. And they were known as giants and sea raiders. So what I'm saying here is our mythology fascinates foreign nations and visitors, and it's a way to educate those of our heritage here in Ireland. And then on the right is the Tau Cross, meaning tea in Greek. There's only 2 of these in Ireland. It's pre-Christian and one of 2 and thought to be Egyptian in origin. And the other one is in Kilnaboy in County Clare. So this was kind of very, very early days, pre and beginning of Christianity. Monks are sailing from Egypt and very, very far distant places. So Tory is a very interesting place to visit. So I'm now going to go to the county that I work in. I'm from County Meath, but live in Sligo. And I've chosen Inishmurray as being the hidden gem of Sligo in terms of heritage. It's a 6th century monastic site on a flat island off the coast of Sligo. And just to the bottom right there, you can see Clochon, and you see a small little church. And Inishmurray is, I suppose, in a way, it's well preserved because very few people visit it. But it is very much prone to natural weathering and erosion, and it's quite, I suppose, susceptible to erosion and weathering. This is lichen. It's a sign of a clean environment. There's a lot of bird life out here in Inishmurray, and again, I think the fact that it's hard to get onto the island protects it in a way, but it is up to the OPW to maintain it. So this is Streeta Beach. I do a Spanish Armada trail here, and as you know, recently the Spanish Armada has kind of been topical in Ireland because of the huge find here in June and July at Streeta in Sligo. I'm showing you this because this is a monument dedicated to those lives who were lost in 1588. There was over 1,000 lives were lost here, where 3 Armada ships were wrecked at Streeta Strand. For me, it's the most important underwater archaeological site in the country, because one, Streeta has 3 wrecks of the Armada, but also what's been found and recently discovered. They retrieved 9 guns, bronze and iron guns, off the seabed in July. Huge, massive undertaking. So these are now in the National Museum of Ireland and will be conserved hopefully within 2 years. The people of Grange and Streeta, in North Sligo and Sligo, are very proud of this heritage, and they want to set up an interpretive centre in Grange to showcase what has been found there over the years. So hopefully, again, it comes down to the people and the funding, and it's really communal awareness and pushing to get that funding to set up the centre. So I hope that'll happen in the future. I just want to go back for a second. The ladies on the right there help me out on when I'm doing the walks. I'm always picking up as I go, and these ladies were from the States last year, and they were more than happy to help me one day on the trail, and I gave them a bag, the Clean Coasts bag that I have in the boot of the car, and they were thrilled to help out just along the trail. So that's the type of thing I like to do on my walking trails. Okay, so these are just more images of the retrieval of a cauldron and cannon off the seabed at Streeta off La Juliana, the largest ship of the 3. So some amazing finds, and the reason why these had to be lifted was because of the storms we've been having. In the last few years, we've been having, as you know, more frequent storms, and as a result, this type of wreckage is being uncovered and made very vulnerable and exposed on the seabed. So you have to lift anything that's just rolling around, basically, and these were. So they had to lift them. Otherwise, really, archaeology is best left in situ. This is just some examples of beach cleans I've done in the last 2 years at Strand Hill, and there's a few people here today from there as well, and who helped out, and are key players in beach cleans. There's a whole load of groups in Sligo who do beach cleans, and it's really great work. So that's just to show you some of the rubbish that we accumulated like in the space of an hour pretty much on both beach cleans. So it's kind of unfortunate that people do deposit rubbish in such beautiful areas, but it happens everywhere, unfortunately. Okay, so now I'm going down to Mayo, and I'm putting this up because, again, it's going back to the story of Ireland and our history. So I suppose, as you know, this is I'm going to talk about the Irish pirate queen Grace O'Malley, and she's remembered to this day for her fierce bravery. She was more or less a chieftain over Connacht and an infamous pirate queen who looted other ships and terrorised seamen in the 16th century. But we all love her. So in the centre of the slide is one of her castles on Clew Bay called Rockfleet Castle, and I think this is along your Greenway, a 16th century tower house near Newport. And the castle is built right on the sea, and at high tide the water comes right up to the base. And Grace, or Grania, used to actually tow the bowline of her ship to, she slept on the third floor, and she tied the bowline to her bedpost at night so that she could get away in case of attack, which is very clever. So the story of a female Irish heroine touches the human sentiment. So Grania sailed to England to plea to Queen Elizabeth for her release for her captured sons and half-brother. So there's a nice visitor centre in Louisburg dedicated to the pirate queen. So again, that's attracting tourists, and I think it's highlighting the maritime history of Clew Bay. Galway has a rich coastal heritage, but a coastline that is battered by storms year after year. Over 18 million was estimated for repairs for storm damage last year for Galway alone. It's a huge amount of money, and the coastline becomes continuously indented from erosion, which is costly for councils, but also impacts on coastal archaeological sites. And sometimes that's a good thing because it reveals new sites. So this medieval settlement was found on Omey Island, and it was uncovered last year and revealed burials, some sunken 18th and 19th century houses, and also an ancient bog dated to 4000 BC, which Michael Gibbons here is a maritime archaeologist in Galway. He's indicating the bog line there. So 4000 BC, 6,000 years ago, we have where the sea is now was woodland. And it's the same as Sligo. There's a layer of bog and probably other counties along down the coast. So it just shows what can happen and what can be revealed after a storm. And it's also showing that climate change isn't just recent, it's happening for thousands of years. The burn, have to mention the burn. It's affected by consistent weathering, exposing a karst Clinton-Grike landscape, revealing a huge number of megalithic tombs. So again, an archaeologist's paradise if you're into prehistory. So it's a national park of 1,500 hectares. And today the limestone is exposed and devoid of vegetation due to the Atlantic winds and rain, resulting in the unique ecological landscape. The Burren Bio Trust were set up in 2012, and they're a voluntary group dedicated to protecting the Burren through education, walks and talks. And the Burren Centre is also a huge tourist attraction. The Burren houses, like I say, numerous tombs. The Portal Domen on the right is, as you know, the bottom right is Pulnabrone, famous for its size and dominance, and it dates to 4200 BC. So there are heaps of wedge tombs as well on the Burren. So down to Limerick here. Limerick coastline is the Shannon Estuary pretty much. The best examples in the country for medieval and prehistoric fish traps are here in the Fergus Estuary. These were investigated by archaeologist Aidan O'Sullivan in the 90s and beyond. And this huge mudflat and intertidal area of the Shannon would have been heavily utilised in the past, and it's now under threat from agricultural pollutants and port industry. But we don't know what the future of the fish traps will be. They are preserved in mud now, but if this area was to be opened up or dredged, then obviously that's an impact on our maritime heritage. So it's good that these have been mapped, and ongoing work is being carried out here. Down to Kerry. Kerry has 43 natural heritage areas and a coastline of up to 680 kilometres, including its islands. So it's up there with Donegal for the most blue flag beaches in Ireland. From a tourism perspective, Kerry is probably the most visited county in Ireland after Dublin. The most impressive heritage site is probably, without a doubt, Skellig Michael. I don't know how many people here have been out there, but for me it's absolutely amazing. It's a 6th century monastic site, similar to Inishmurray, out on a huge sea stack, 218 metres out of the sea, or sticking up out of the sea off the coast. And the OPW have done some great conservation work here in the past, but the island does need better visitor management. And I think the government need to provide more resources towards visitor management here at Skellig Michael, because, like I say, it's definitely one of the best heritage sites in the country, and it's UNESCO World Heritage Site as well. From a wildlife perspective, the little puffin is sitting there. Thousands of puffins live on the islands during the summer, where they breed and fatten their young before leaving for Canada and the Arctic. Scientists from the Coastal Marine Research Centre in UCC are studying their improvements and patterns. So again, positive eco work being done there. So to Cork, back to the underwater stuff. Welcome to the RMS Lusitania, a British ocean liner that was travelling from New York to Liverpool in 1915. And it was torpedoed by a German sub off the coast of Cork, resulting in the loss of 1,198 lives. And passengers and crew were included in that. The image on the right shows a photo of a yellow submarine that was flown in 2008 on the wreck site and owned by Greg Bemis. He's the owner of the wreck site. And it's alongside the body of the wreckage that lies 91 metres below the surface. So the Lusitania, like the SS Laurentic, will never be raised or recovered. The operation would be too dangerous, too difficult and too expensive. However, Cove Museum today houses some artefacts from the ship's passengers. And I also found during this research that there's plans and a project that was carried out this year at the old head of Kinsale Signal Tower towards having a museum on the Lusitania. So these are positive outcomes, I suppose, from a past tragic event, and I think the more of that, the better in Ireland. It's all positive heritage tourism developing here. Okay, over to Waterford. 69 territories across Europe are designated as European geoparks, and they all use and promote their geology and facets of other heritage such as archaeology, culture, flora and fauna as tools for ecological tourism. So the Copper Coast in Waterford was dedicated in 2004 as a geopark, a global geopark, and stretches for a distance of 90 square kilometres. So now we have a geopark centre in Bunmahon in County Waterford. And then I can't not mention the Vikings when it comes to Waterford. Our ancestors are the Vikings, and they began to infiltrate Ireland in the 8th century. And Waterford became a Viking city in 1914. Sorry, did I say 914 AD? And now houses three museums. One is the Waterford Treasures Museum, housing medieval artefacts. One is the Reginald's Tower, housing Viking artefacts. And then there's Bishop Palace, housing pieces from the latter centuries. So on the right is a reconstruction of the Viking ship that was found in Roskilde in Denmark, but it turned out that it was actually made in Dublin in the 11th century. On now to County Wexford. You all are familiar with Hook Lighthouse. So it claims to be the oldest operational lighthouse in the world. And in the 13th century, William Marshall, Earl of Pembrokeshire, had a castle at Kilkenny and Wales at that time. And he chose this point for a lighthouse to guide ships into Waterford Harbour. And today it's a popular tourist attraction and heritage centre, and you could do guided tours here all year round. And the lighthouse keepers would have witnessed many a guided accident and wrecking, but they also guided many a ship into safety throughout hundreds of years from here. So there's a lot of lighthouses, as you know, in Ireland, and some of them are heritage sites. They're also, I think, a really important part of our maritime history and should be conserved and protected. Up to Arklow in County Wicklow. This town was actually mapped at the time when Ptolemy surveyors were mapping the coast in the 2nd century AD. So that's Ptolemy's map on the left. And you can see, I don't know if I have a cursor, yeah, there. The river Oboka, it's spelled as, so that's the Avoca River there. And then you have Eblana, which is the supposedly Dublin. So the Liffey and the Oboka were some of the earliest rivers to be mapped in the 2nd century. So the name Arklow is actually an anglicised version for Great Irish Estuary, and the Vikings sailed in here in the 9th century and would have built a long fort on the Avonmore River. And the Normans later consolidated this in the 12th century. So from then, the town traded regularly with England and Europe and has an interesting maritime history. And on the right, you can see pictures of the harbour when it was very busy in the past. And there's also a maritime history in Arklow and an industrial port. And just off the Arklow is the Arklow Bank. And years ago, when wind farming was just beginning here, they were investigating the bank and they found hundreds of shipwrecks on both the Kish Bank and the Arklow Bank. So again, if we hadn't had wind farm energy coming here, you may not have the revealing of underwater archaeological heritage. So there are positives, outcomes of development. Then going to Dublin, on the left, this is John Speed, and he mapped Dublin in the 17th century. The map on the right dates to 1610. He was a historian and cartographer, and treated very well by the Queen. Speed was employed by the English Crown to map the city, and at this time Dublin would have been a very busy trading maritime port, trading heavily with Europe. So shipping was part of everyday life in Dublin in those days. But I'm going to go back to the Vikings again. Dublin was originally a Viking city, as you know, and the Vikings built their settlement out of a marshy pool and estuary using layers of brushwood and many hours and days of hard labour. And the most famous and controversial Viking site from Ireland is undoubtedly Wood Quay, which produced a huge amount of impressive artefacts in the 70s, many of which are housed now in the National Museum in Dublin, so worth going to see. And that's just a reconstruction drawing of a long fort just above. And then you have the excavations in the 70s where the civic offices are now, and on the right is a pillbox that they found on the site. So then up to Louth, stroke Meath. Louth, the word Louth comes from Lu, and Lu is the Celtic god of light and sun. So Louth is steeped in mythology. There are numerous prehistoric sites close to the coast in Louth, such as tombs, and the Cooley Peninsula is famous for Anton Bo Coolina, the story of when Queen Maeve of Connacht retrieved the bull of Cooley Peninsula. So again, mythology, in my opinion, is a way of bringing out the stories of Ireland to the youth population here and to the adult population who visit Ireland. And then Drogheda on the north, on the top left there is the gate into Drogheda. And although Drogheda was a port founded in the 12th century, the boat in the middle is a reconstruction of a clinker-built boat that was dating to the 1500s, and it was found as the result of dredging in the harbour in Drogheda. So this model was made by the archaeologists who actually dived on the wreck. They found it just kind of on the shallower parts of the harbour. So dredging, although it is negative, it is needed to clear harbours for ships to come in and out, but it does impact the seabed. But sometimes it uncovers precious underwater archaeological heritage such as this. So this is a great find. But when they studied the barrels that were sitting on the boat, 14 barrels, they discovered that they had been transporting fish over and back to France and Spain, and previous to that they had been transporting wine to Drogheda. So that was interesting. So the more work that's done, the more we know about our past maritime heritage. So there are the positives. I hope you'll see them as positives anyway, of what's going on in terms of heritage awareness and development in the country. And I do think that ecology and ecotourism tie in and are extremely close with heritage tourism, because natural and built heritage it's all environmental. And I suppose the message I think we can all put across is keeping Ireland clean, but also preserving what we have, which is more than a lot of countries out there. So thanks very much.